generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are talking about A Haunting in Venice. This is the third film in the series that follows Murder on the Oriental Express and Death on the Nile. And here we have this third one. We were trying to figure out how to say his last name, but we'll just go by, at least I'm going to go by his first name. Our main character, Hercule, he has been basically the one that binds all these movies together. He's the only one that really repeats, so to speak, because he's a very, very good investigator, and people want him to investigate things so that they can have their answers. And so in this movie, we get a little bit of a different feel. As advertised, the movie, and with the title, the movie is trying to go more for a horror approach than probably some of the stuff we've had in the past. The past two movies, in my opinion, have been pretty much pure just mystery slash crime type movies, whereas this movie had a fair share of jump scares. There was one that made me slightly have my heart rate go up a little bit, but there was definitely a good chunk of jump scares in this one.
Had a lot more of a creepy vibe to it than the other two.
Yeah, the atmosphere was way more creepy as well. The nightlife of Venice and how creepy it can be while a storm is going on and stuff like that.
On Halloween.
Yeah, on Halloween. So we're going to go ahead and talk about some things about the movie that are non-spoiler here first to kind of give our opinions. And then once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and talk about some spoilers of what the movie was about to try to back up some of the thoughts that we had with our ratings. So I think I can just go first here. I thought the movie was good. I am a fan of the series. I was very excited to go and see this movie because at first I didn't know that's what this movie was until I saw a preview that had my favorite character from all the movies in it. And I was like, oh my God, he looks just like the dude from, Murder on the Oriental Express. And then he started talking, the way he talks from those movies, and come to find out it was a mystery. And then that's what led me to find out, hey, this is actually movie number 3. I liked it. I liked the series. I don't know if I would say I liked it as much as some of the other ones. I think I was expecting a little bit more from the scary point of view. I don't want to dip into too many spoilers here, obviously. But I would say if you're going into this movie thinking that you're going to get like a pure horror movie, where you're anticipated to be scared and you're going to be afraid of something on screen, I don't think this is quite the movie for you. What I think you need to understand is that they're still going to follow, what the series is about. Something's going to happen and he's going to try to figure out what's going on. But I wouldn't put too much on an emphasis of, oh my goodness, this is going to be like a scary movie. It's almost October and we're going to get something cool, like in terms of being scared for your life. And I don't think you're going to get that here. So I think it's good. I think it's good to understand what you're getting into. And I think based on what my expectations were, I liked it, just not my favorite of all the series. What did you think?
So I don't know that I've seen a trailer or not, but just going by the little description on IMDb, I don't think it really gives away any spoilers. It's just kind of, what the movie is about from a really broad, wide lens, right? So it says in post World War II, Venice, our main guy Hercule, now he is retired and he's living in his own exile. But he reluctantly attends a seance. And when one of the guests is murdered, it's up to the former detective to once again uncover the killer. So that to me kind of describes exactly what you said. There's a seance, it's going to be a little spooky, but there's going to be a murder. He's got to go back to his old ways and try to figure out what the heck is going on. So it's still that murder mystery style vibe, but with like a spooky twist. I don't think horror's the right word for it. I think spooky covers it pretty well, in my opinion. It wasn't something where I was super scared the whole time, but I definitely was creeped out, and there were a handful of jump scares that got me pretty good. One got me real good. Like I thought something happened in the theater. It was so loud. That definitely shook me in my boots, if you will. In terms of how well I liked the movie or not, I actually really liked it. I didn't have a whole lot of an opinion going into it. I just knew it was kind of based on that one character, Hercule. In terms of the other movies, to kind of give background, I thought they were all right. The first one I really liked. The second one I thought was okay. Just because it kind of seemed like a wash, rinse, repeat of I don't remember which one I watched first, but they both seemed so close to each other in style, it didn't really seem like it was a new movie to me. Whereas this one, I felt like there was enough uniqueness about it that I really enjoyed that it was different. And I like kind of that spooky, kind of creepy vibe that it was giving off. So I really liked the movie. In terms of things that I maybe didn't like so much is when you're trying to get that creepy vibe, you will sometimes do a lot of unusual filming shots, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And one thing that a lot of directors tend to use is kind of like a panning of the screen or a panning up of the screen to the point where you're looking upside down at something. And when you're doing those kinds of motions, especially the one where you're all of a sudden looking upside down, it really messes with my motion sickness. And it's not like I felt sick, like I'm gonna throw up, but it was enough to make me feel uncomfortable and not in a way that I enjoyed. There was a handful of times where they were looking at characters and it was just almost uncomfortably close to their face. Like I felt like whoa, can we take a step back here for a sec, because I'm like right in their face, and it wasn't even for like an effect of boldness. It was kind of just like there were two characters talking, and for whatever reason we're extremely close to one of them, and it just didn't make sense to me. So there's just a few like filming things here or there that were kind of mildly annoying, I guess is probably the best way to say it. Not my favorite. The only other thing I would have to say besides that, because again, that's kind of nitpicky on my part because not everybody has motion sickness like I do, but it's one thing that I don't know, that kind of sticks with me when I'm watching movies. Was there are so many characters. You can see in my background. These are like they're all main characters. All of these. I don't know how many there are right there, but that's a lot. And when there's that many characters and a lot of their names are extremely hard to say, or they're being spoken with an Italian accent because they're in Venice, Italy, right? Which is fine. But it's hard sometimes to tell the difference between certain characters, both when we're looking at them, because a handful of the guys kind of look similar, especially in dark lighting, and when they're saying characters' names. Sometimes I had no idea what they were saying or who they were talking about. And that made it a little confusing in terms of, when you're trying to accuse who a killer is, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell who they're actually accusing because you might not know who their names are.
The way that I dealt with that is I just remembered what they did like who they were. So like one guy, like I'll even list it off: doctor, seance lady, author, mother of the girl that died. That's how I remember it. And like there's the bodyguard, there's the doctor's son, and there's the ex-boyfriend of the girl that died. I mean,
But I
that's
think
how
he's
I
also
remember it
referred
all.
to as the chef.
Could have
Is
been.
it?
And then there was two.
Plus there's a couple caretakers.
Yeah, there was the two people that, like you said, were caretakers. There was also somebody that was like the behind the scenes helper of the seance lady. Um, more on that later. But yeah, I basically just gave them titles. I didn't even care about their names because there was too much to keep track of. I did think
That's my point.
before we get to our ratings here, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about that will bring down the movie quite a bit for me, and but it makes sense, and I'll tell you why. So one of the reasons why that I love this series so much is because I think our main character, Hercule, is such an interesting character, and he has some very witty humor in the previous films. Like, I'm like, did he just say that? That is hilarious, kind of a thing. Like, Sarah always tells me that sometimes I have super dry humor where, like, I say things that are ridiculous with such a straight face. And he does that a lot in the previous movies. And I felt like he hardly, if at all, did it in this movie. I think maybe once, because there's one time that I laughed in the movie. Um, but on the flip side of that, they are playing him as almost like a retired grouch. So, that kind of fits into the character. And I guess that's just, I have to deal with it kind of a thing. So that was one of probably my biggest complaint of the movie. So let's go ahead and get into our ratings here really quick. Sarah always starts, and she always tells me that it's not fair that she always starts. So I'll go ahead and start today.
Oh my gosh, it's a miracle.
If I had to give this movie a rating, I would probably go. My gut goes with a 7. I'm at a 7 for this movie. Part of me had wondered 6, but I'm like, it wasn't bad. It was pretty good. So why'd I give it a 7? For one, I think it's a little above average film. It's interesting. It kept me invested the entire time. But like I said, I wish there was a little bit more of a horror element based on like what the trailers are portraying. I also kind of felt like, and I forgot to look it up. I kind of felt like the movie was short. But I might have to look that up while you're giving your rating.
It's an hour 43.
Well, I mean, compared to the other ones, because I kind of felt like they set the setting, and then the stuff happened, and then they interrogated, and then the movie was over. It felt like he picked out who it was like relatively quickly after he talked to everybody. Like there was no breathing room in between, kind of a thing.
Death on the Nile was 2 hours and 7 minutes, and Murder on the Orient Express was an hour 54.
Okay, so
Whereas this one's an hour 43. So they chopped off about somewhere in the realm of 15 to 25 minutes compared to the other films.
Okay, so then and I guess that feeling is
Justified.
justified. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of felt like, but even without that knowledge, I felt that the movie was kind of rushed a little bit too. Like they just got to the point, they investigated a couple of people, got to the point, and then we were out of the movie theater. I think they could have had maybe a little bit more of that horror going on to keep the atmosphere at a horror tone, because they did have a couple of things sprinkled here and there throughout, of course, but there could have been more, especially with some of the stuff they were talking about in the beginning. And again, we'll get into spoilers, but they had a really like creepy story that they told in the beginning of the movie. I feel like they could have played off of that a little bit more and like played with it. So I'm at a 7. It's good. I enjoyed it. But I definitely think it could have been a little bit better.
Yeah, I same thing, and not in ratings, but in wish it was just a little bit longer, that they had elaborated on just a little bit more. Um, I was kind of torn between, are they going fast because they don't give you too much time to think, because that's kind of films, is you don't have enough time to actually think through it yourself. So he seems more clever because he solves it much faster than you. Looking at the runtime of the previous two films, this one does seem like it was a little bit rushed compared to the other ones. Um, my rating, I was really torn between an 8 and a 9. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was really spooky. Was it scary? Only with the jump scares, really, but it definitely was spooky, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. I feel like I keep saying that, but there's not really a better word, I think.
If I were to, I mean, I think that fits it perfectly. Like horror really isn't what it would be defined as, but spooky, I could see that.
Yeah. Um, and you're I think you're right on the money with the story they were telling at the beginning, which I don't want to say what that is, for the sake of spoilers, but that there could have been some more elaboration on it, or maybe some more time emphasized on it, to kind of bring out a little bit more of that horror element. Um, all that being said, with what I said earlier on the characters being kind of hard to tell apart sometimes, both because of names and because of, facial features, especially a lot of the guys, I, sometimes couldn't really tell who's who, and the different filming styles that maybe weren't my favorite. I think I'm gonna have to go at an 8. I walked out of the theater thinking a 9, but I'm feeling like an 8 is more where it should be. It was definitely above average for me, with average being a 5. But those couple things I think could have really pulled it to be a little bit higher. So I'm at an 8.
All right, sounds good. So we're gonna be getting to the spoilers here, but just to recap, I gave it a 7, Sarah gave it an 8, and there's plenty of good reasons why that we supplied to talk about those. So all right, let's go ahead and talk about spoilers. I know I want you to talk about most of the movie because you enjoyed it a little bit more, and maybe you can give some better background on some of that stuff. But there's one thing I wanted to talk about, is what that story was in the beginning. So, the movie starts and we're learning a little bit about Hercule's everyday life. And he runs into this author, and she wants him to go to this seance Halloween party, basically to be a part of the seance. Some, like Sarah said, spooky stuff to enjoy. And the one thing that I want to cover here is that when they go to this Halloween party, apparently where the building is somewhere where they used to have a whole bunch of kids and a couple of doctors. I think it was like a hospital or something. And basically this is an animated show, and I thought this was super cool. I didn't, like, if this is how animation was done back in the 40s, because that's when it takes place, I think that was really cool to learn. But they were showing basically an animated show of how these doctors of the place locked all these children in the basement and then let them starve to death, basically, and they just died. And the creepiness of the building is that the children that died there want more children to join them, and so there's this heebie-jeebies creepiness of the building, and it's like the little bit of fear factor of the Halloween party for being at that same location.
Well, not only did they want kids to join them, but they also want to haunt all doctors and nurses and punish them for what had happened to them.
Right. Yeah, because they were like, are there any doctors or nurses in the room? Okay, then you have nothing to be afraid of. Okay, enjoy the Halloween party, All right, that's what I wanted to cover. So what's the rest of the movie?
All right, so I'm gonna take it a step further back just for a little quick second here. Basically, Hercule has a bodyguard who's instructed to not let anybody in, right? And this is kind of a crucial part for later in the film. So he's not supposed to let anybody into his house or to talk to him, even though everybody wants him to be their detective on their case. So he's this highly sought after guy. But he's allowed a visitor, and it's this author lady who I guess used to be his friend once upon a time, who has written a lot of books. Apparently, she made Hercule famous from some of her books because they focused on him and kind of like murder mystery style books. And she wants him to debunk this seance lady because she can't figure out what's wrong or where's the trick or what am I not seeing, right? And so he obliges and he goes to this Halloween party at, I think it's called a Palisade is where they're holding it. The lady that owns the building, the mom, if you will, she has a daughter who passed away. Some people think it was a suicide by jumping out the window. Some people think she was pushed out the window. And so she wants to do a seance to contact her daughter to kind of figure out what happened and to be able to talk to her again. And so that's why they're having this seance in this house. So they have the Halloween party. Then they go ahead and do the seance. Let's talk about kind of who's in the room here at this seance. So you've got Hercule the detective, you've got the author lady, the seance lady, the mom, right? But then I think also living in the house is the doctor, because I think that's like also her boyfriend.
The mom's boyfriend?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that, but
Maybe I'm wrong here. This is kind of where things are a little hazy in terms of character relations. But anyway, so the doctor is there with his son, who's like, I don't know, a 10-year-old boy. Then you also have a caretaker lady of the house who normally isn't there at night, but she's here for the seance. And then you have the dead daughter's ex-fiance. He arrives at the house saying, I was summoned. Here's my invitation card telling me to show up here because there was going to be more information about my fiance revealed, right? Even though she's dead. So that's kind of who we've got in the room. So the seance starts. Things are kind of creepy. Some weird things happen in the house that seem like they can't really be described or reasoned, right? But Hercule kind of stops the seance while it's happening and says, hey, basically there's somebody in the chimney. And so he takes the guy out of the chimney and finds out that, he was hiding in there and he was the one messing with some of the things in the room, like making things type on the typewriter. And so he's already debunking this seance lady. Like, something's not right here. You've got people pulling some strings behind the curtains that we can't see. So then some kind of weird things happen with the seance where the lady sounds like she's being possessed, and then she sounds like the dead daughter. Like, the voice coming out is the dead daughter's voice, who is basically trying to say that she was going to say who the murderer is, or who murdered her, who pushed her off that balcony. But before that happens, the lady kind of comes to, and it doesn't ever come to fruition. We don't ever get to hear who the murderer is from that, right? But while this is happening, I'm blanking here. Who's the first murder victim?
it was the seance lady.
Oh, you're right. Oops. All right. All I could remember was what happened later in the film, because that okay. So anyway, sorry about that, guys. So everybody's kind of walking around the house, and we hear this weird crash, and then that's when they find the Sans lady dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of when things get to go a little crazy because, he locks all the Hercule, the detective, he locks all the doors. He starts going back to his old ways of we're going to investigate everybody and figure out what's going on. And at first, he rules out the author lady like almost immediately. So he's like, okay, well, you're going to be my assistant because I know it wasn't you because of X, Y, and Z, right? But before he does his interviewing, the mom makes some tea for everybody, and that's kind of important for a little bit later. So everybody has some tea to kind of calm their nerves, because, oh my gosh, somebody just died in this house, and it's got to be one of us. Like, who's the killer, right? The phones are all dead. The police can't come because there's a nasty storm, and the only way in is by boat, but their boats would crash if they came in. So the police aren't going to help. So it's all up to Hercule to figure out what's going on. So he's doing his investigating. There's some weird things, like he can hear a child laughing and singing at certain points. And at one point, he even sees a kid and is able to talk to her. He sees somebody in the mirror behind him when he's in the bathroom. There's weird things where the faucets don't work, and then all of a sudden they do work even after he's turned them off. So there's kind of some weird things going on. There's this creepy bird that I guess was the childhood bird who's, constantly flying through to try to scare you because there's a bird flying at you from the screen. The doctor, who is also the boy's dad, he's got some pretty severe PTSD from the war. And so he winds up getting in a fist fight with the
Ex-boyfriend.
ex-boyfriend. And so things are just getting to be a bit much for him. So he essentially takes a sleeping pill to kind of sleep things off because he's going crazy at this point. And they lock him in a room. Did I jump too far ahead, you think? All right.
The only thing I think that we missed is that I think before the Seance lady died, Hercule was trying to have a little bit of fun because he was basically like interacting with the Seance lady, talking about how, like, you've been taking money from people, blah, blah, blah. And he tries to have a little bit of Halloween fun and bob for apples. And when he goes to try, somebody tries to kill him. But he's pulled out by, I forget who he's pulled out by, but they stop him from drowning.
I think he's pulled out by the doctor.
I don't remember.
But maybe it was the bodyguard. I'm not sure. One of those two.
But you can keep on going.
But yeah, so no, that's a good point. So he almost died, and then the seance lady did get killed, right? So then you've got the PTSD episode of the doctor and needing to kind of sleep things off. So he goes and takes a medicated nap, if you will, in this room where the mom locks the door, and she gives the key to the detective and says, like, hey, this is the only key in here to this room. We're locking him in here for his own safety. That way, nothing crazy can happen. Well, there's a whole lot of backstory going on between the seance lady's two assistants and how they've kind of been deceiving people. Like they've got fake passports. They're kind of just out to get money because they want to go to America, and so maybe they've been doing some bad business practices and haven't been the happiest as being the seance lady's assistants. So there's that kind of thing kind of leading you down that path. But then Hercule is investigating the author and his bodyguard because the bodyguard somehow knew where one of the secret phones was in the building. And so he recognizes that this is not the first time the bodyguard's been in this building, even though he said he'd never been here before. The bodyguard was a retired police officer, and so come to find out he was the police officer when the daughter fell out the window and was killed. So he had been there from that, and him and the author lady are kind of in cahoots a little bit because he's got all these details from that day where the daughter died that he was able to feed the author and the seance lady to kind of give them more background and kind of help plant evidence to show that there was some crazy things going on, to see if they could dupe Hercule. That way she could write a new book about him and make all kinds of money. So he's kind of going down that path and making you think maybe they've got something to do with it. At the same time, the seance lady apparently was a nurse back in the war. And so that kind of played into that. I almost said fairy tale. It's not a fairy tale. The story from the beginning of the movie where the children haunting the house are after the nurses and doctors. So a seance lady who used to be a nurse, that kind of is like a red herring of saying maybe it really is the kids that are doing this. Maybe they killed her because she used to be a nurse, right? Well, while Hercule is investigating the author lady and his bodyguard, the mom rushes in saying like, hey, we need your help. We need you to unlock that room where the doctor is. Like immediately, there's somebody else in the room with him. So he rushes over, he unlocks the room, and we see the doctor there dead in the room, stabbed in the back with a sword, or like maybe not a full-on sword, but like a scimitar.
Short blade.
Yeah.
Small
So how
sword.
did he get stabbed in the back if there's nobody else in here and there's no way that they could get in when their only door
Oh my god.
was locked, and the detective had the only key. So they're trying to figure out what's going on, and basically what we come to find out is the mom had been blackmailed because do you think I'm good to kind of just jump to what the realization is, who the murderers are and whatnot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So come to find out, here's how this all unfolds, right? Is mom did not like the new boyfriend that the daughter had, the ex-fiance. Mom really didn't like him because it stole her baby girl away, right? So when the daughter came home because she was upset with him, the mom started to poison her with tea to kind of make her not like deadly sick, but sick enough that she needed to stay home and that she needed mom because mom needed to be needed, all right? Well, mom had the housekeeper watching her one night, and the housekeeper knew that she was seeing things and she wasn't doing very well. And so to try to calm her down, she gave her some more tea with honey. But come to find out, the honey is what the poison was in, and she didn't know that. And so she gave her a deadly dose. So that's how the daughter died, was by accidental poisoning from the housekeeper. From the poison that the mom was giving her. So the mom was the one who was making her hallucinate and stuff. So when mom found out, she essentially threw her out the window to try to cover up that she was the murderer.
Like a suicide.
Yeah, so try to make it look like it was a suicide. So who would know about this, right? Potentially the housekeeper, because she's the one that gave her the poison unintentionally. The doctor who did the medical examination on her and kind of wrote some shoddy notes to say that, yup, it was a drowning or like a suicide. And also the policeman who is now Hercule's bodyguard. So he's also kind of in on this. So Hercules found out that the mom is the one who killed her, but then who killed the seance lady who was a nurse, and who killed the doctor? because that's also part of the story, is that nurses and doctors, right? So who killed those two then? And what Hercule finds out is that the mom knew that the seance lady was onto something, and the mom knew that somebody was blackmailing her, saying, I know your secret. I know you poisoned her. So send me this money, right? And the mom was tired of paying because she was basically broke at this point. She didn't have any money left. And she thought it was the doctor who was blackmailing her. So she told the doctor, basically, either you kill yourself or I'm going to kill your son. Well, the doctor didn't want his son to die because that's like the only thing he had going for him in his life. So the doctor killed himself. He managed to prop up the sword, like handle against the wall, blade against his back, and somehow managed to shove himself onto that blade, killing himself. So it looked like he was murdered when really he wasn't. So mom is the one who killed the daughter. She pushed the seance lady over the balcony so that she was impaled by a statue. So she killed her too. And she inadvertently killed the doctor. Like, she wasn't the one who stabbed him, but she forced him to stab himself. That was not something by his choice. But then who was the one who was doing the blackmailing? Dun dun dun!
Plot twist.
Just when you think you have everything figured out, right? The son of the doctor was actually a very, very smart kid. You could see at the party at the very beginning when there's all these kids playing, he was kind of antisocial because, they're children, they're playing childish games. He's not really into that. He likes to read. He was reading Edgar Allan Poe, which is kind of a lot more sophisticated and scary reading for a kid his age than what most kids would want to read. But I guess he had read a book in a library once about somebody poisoning somebody and took a shot in the dark because he knew him and his dad didn't have any money to really live off of because the dad had such bad PTSD. He didn't really work as much as maybe a parent should, or, he wasn't able to provide for his kid as much as maybe he should. And so the kid wanted to be able to provide for his family, him and his dad, so that they actually had a means of living. And so he took a shot in the dark and he blackmailed the mom, and it worked. He didn't have any proof about the poisoning, but he basically guessed that that's what it was, and surprise, that's what it really was. So in a way, he almost kind of killed his own dad because he was blackmailing the mom, and the mom thought that the dad, the doctor, was the one blackmailing. So she made him kill himself because she couldn't pay any more blackmail, when really it was the kid that was doing the blackmailing. So I guess to kind of wrap things up with how the movie ended was the kid, who now doesn't have a dad anymore, is going to go live with the housekeeper. The seance lady's assistants, who really wanted to move to America. The kid has all this money, right, from the blackmailing, way more than what he needs. So he's giving some of it to those two assistants. That way they can move to America. And Hercule is back to his old self, where he is helping people do his investigating, his detective work. Now, in terms of, did he debunk all of the hauntings? And this is kind of something that I think Jeremy and I differ in opinion on, so I'm going to open the floor for discussion here in just a second.
I say, there's one thing I want to say.
Go for it.
The body count was 3, and you talked about 2 of them. There was one more person that died.
Oh, yes. Do you want to cover that piece?
Basically, the mom was embarrassed and threw herself out the window. She died too.
Okay. Yeah, well, there was also some kind of images shown of the daughter, like when she jumped out the window, the daughter pulling her under the water to kind of like almost punish her for ending her life short and whatnot. So it was kind of interesting to see. Where was it going with this? Okay, so did he debunk the hauntings? All right. He is saying, hey, after that first murder, we were kind of all upset and you gave us all tea. I think that that tea had the hallucinogenic honey in there because the housekeeper talked about finding, or no, I'm sorry, it was the author lady who talked about finding the honey in the linen closet, which is a weird place to store honey because you were hiding it because it was poisonous. So Hercule is kind of writing it all off as I was on a hallucinogen, so I think I imagined everything. But there's some things I think that happened that kind of say that that can't be it, and that maybe he really did see some things that weren't what they were supposed to be, and that it wasn't because he was hallucinating. And here's what I think. He could hear the little girl singing. And then at one point, he saw the little girl and he was talking to her, right? So he's going to think that this is hallucinating, or at least that's what he's saying. But it wasn't until later in the film that he actually saw a picture of what the 20-something-year-old girl that died, what she looked like when she was a kid. And that's who he was talking to in the hallway. So how would he know what she looked like as a child unless it was really her spirit talking to him? Like, how could he hallucinate exactly what she looked like when she was a kid if he'd never seen a picture before?
See, that's where there's a couple different things with it. One, I can't remember if he possibly saw her before then. Like I feel like it was it. I don't have definitive proof that he did not see her before hallucinating her. Second, though, I've never hallucinated before, like tripped out, so I can't. Part of me believes that like he was just hallucinating, and it happened to be, because the first one that he saw didn't really look. It looked like just a kid. It didn't really, because they were like grayed and stuff like that, like someone that had drowned maybe. But the second time he saw her, I don't know. I'd have to see it again, because now that I'm aware of what was going on, I want to go back and see, like, was there a point where he had seen a picture of her? Like maybe he saw a picture on the wall, or he did. He did. It was when the kids were having the party and the kids were messing around in the hallway and they were like doing a sword fight or something, and they knocked over that painting, and then he took the painting and he readjusted it. That was the daughter.
Mm.
It was an older picture of the daughter, like when we're seeing the ex-boyfriend, he has like a picture of her, in his pocket. It was that visual of her, but it wasn't the younger version of her. So I wonder if he was hallucinating her as a younger version of herself. But he definitely saw a picture of her around the age of when she was killed.
Okay.
I do remember that.
Okay.
So I had thought to myself, like, that was kind of a weird scene to have in there, but maybe it's just like a fun little thing to see what he was up to at the party. But now that we're talking about it, it's like that might have been reason why.
It could be. Yeah, you're right. I just remembered one more thing that we kind of forgot to cover. Do you want to go over who tried to drown him in the bobbing for apple tanks
I have
and
no idea.
why? Oh, you okay. I will cover that then. So Hercule was talking to the seance lady like very shortly before she died, and she's trying to get him to lighten up. She wants him to have some fun, so she puts her robe and hood and mask on him to kind of put him in the Halloween
Oh,
spirit.
I remember now.
She goes away. like walks away or whatever. He sees the apple tank. He decides like, I guess maybe I'll try bobbing for apples, right? And then that's when somebody hits him upside the head and tries to drown him. Uh, but what's going on here is that the mom thought that that was the seance lady because he was wearing all of her clothes and her mask and everything. And so when she realized that that wasn't her, she fled the scene to go find the seance lady, and then that's when she threw her over the balcony.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really that she was trying to hurt Hercule, it's that she thought that Hercule was the seance lady.
Right. Yep. Once you had brought up what he was wearing, I was like, oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the movie. Like I said, it definitely follows the roots of the other movies, which is great. But I think when they're trying to spice it up a little bit with a different theme of the movies, I think they probably could have went a little harder on that theme as opposed to maybe playing it kind of safe. I don't.
Yeah, he found a door to the basement that the mom claimed didn't exist. There is no basement here, right? So he finds the secret door to the basement, and some scary storm noises are happening. And I think at one point he sees a children's skeleton, kind of proving that there were kids locked in the basement, that the doctors had locked in the basement to starve to death. And this like swarm of bees or wasps or whatever comes out of the skeleton. So like it's spooky, you know. You got the spooky noises from the storm, you got the spookiness of the skeleton and what's going on there, and then the bees and, you know, scaring you and stuff. And I feel like we should have spent there should have been more concern of, oh my gosh, I just found a child skeleton. And instead, we kind of just walked away from it and left it as is. Like, I feel like there'd be some more investigating going on there. It's kind of, they left that kind of short.
Yeah, and that probably could have been a nice doorway to having more of that horror aspect in the film. But it is what it is, you know. But it was a good movie. It was a good movie. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I feel like that covers it pretty well. I liked the twists. I didn't The movie moves so fast I didn't really have time to make predictions as to who I thought it was, but it definitely wasn't obvious to me either. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I know for myself when I was watching, when he so right away when he said the author wasn't a part of it, I was like, she's a part of it. And then they went and did something else, and then he was talking about how that person could have been it. I was like, it's got to be a part of it. And I was just like thinking it's everybody. They're all on it. Well, kind of a good chunk of them were all in on it in some way, shape, or form. Like they all had their own motives. So
they were all pretty suspicious.
Yeah, they were all sus. They were all going to be, what's that? Trying to think of what the term is for Among Us when they launch them, but I don't know.
Ejected? I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. But if you enjoy this type of video where we talk about the latest movies that have coming out, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when our discussion videos drop. We have pretty much a movie planned almost every week for the next few weeks. So come back for some of those. I know next week I will be covering The Expendables. And I think the week after that, we will be covering Saw. And at some point, we're going to cover House of a Thousand Corpses because we haven't seen that. And there's going to be an anniversary showing of it. And I know the big movie in October that we're excited to talk about is Five Nights at Freddy's. So stick around with us. Drop a like if you like the video and drop a comment letting us know your thoughts on A Haunting in Venice. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.